Hey guys, it is Mission Discover. Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about slingshot shooting, in particular two strategies that I've been using for about the last year. And these strategies are really efficient. They have got me more accurate than I've ever been, with actually a lot less practice time devoted to shooting. So before we jump into the meat of this video, I want to quickly go over who this video is meant for. It's only going to take me a minute, but I think it's really important. This video is really designed for people who are in the novice or intermediate stages of their slingshot shooting. Some advanced shooters who are looking for a more niche tactic to supplement their main shooting strategy could benefit from this video as well. But really those people who are in the more beginner stages of their shooting are going to be those who will benefit the most from this video. This video is obviously not for most advanced or elite shooters who already have their own technique developed and dialed in. I also don't think it is for complete beginners who have not touched a slingshot before, because I don't really go over any of the framework of how this works. If you are in the place of being a complete beginner at slingshot shooting, there are two recommendations I have for you before coming back and watching this video, and that is to go over to Fowler's Makery and Mischief's channel. Zachary Fowler is a great slingshot shooter, and he made a video a couple years ago about how to shoot a slingshot. It shows you the basic framework and how to set certain things up. It gets you started really well. It's the video that I watched when I first started shooting about 3.5 years ago, and it sets you up really well. And I also recommend going down in my channel feed and looking at the video about essential slingshot shooting gear. That video gives you a general guidelines on what type of gear to look for, and that type of gear is going to set you up really well for your shooting for a long time to come. So when it comes to slingshot shooting, there are three main ways that you can adjust your shot placement and accuracy. The first is by changing the amount of stretch and thus power that you put into your bands. The second is by adjusting your anchor point up or down to change the angle of the shot. And the third is changing the way in which you hold and release your shot to change the amount of movement that you have in your shot aiming. Two of the adjustments that I just mentioned to you are the basis of my two recommendations and strategies that I'm going to talk about today. However, the first strategy I talked about, which is adjusting how much power and stretch you're putting into your bands, I would recommend staying away from. That is because both of the ways that you can adjust how much power you're putting into your band sets are not ideal. One of the ways that you can adjust how much power and stretch you are putting into your shot is by changing how long you cut your bands. The longer your bands are, the less it will stretch per the same draw length. Thus your shot will drop more since it does not have enough power, and your shot will be lower, and vice versa. Shorter band lengths means it's going to stretch more power, and it's going to be a higher shot. This is not ideal since you'd actually have to cut your bands every single time you shoot, and you're going to go through a lot of bands very quick since a lot of them will become very short over time as you just keep cutting them down. Another way you could do this is just by adjusting how far back you pull your shot. Similarly, this would adjust how much power the shot has and thus how much it drops throughout its trajectory. But our bodies just aren't calibrated enough to be able to pull it back the exact same length every single time unless we have a preset anchor point like this one I have here. There's a variety of anchor point lengths and draw lengths that you could have. For example, Zachary Fowler, who I mentioned earlier, has a full butterfly draw length all the way out here. But it's just too variable to be able to try and adjust that on the fly. So I would recommend just finding one that you like and sticking with that, and just going for adjusting your shot placement with these other two methods. The second main factor is where your anchor point is. If you have an anchor point parallel to the ground, your shot's going to go relatively straight. However, if you bring that anchor point down, your shot is now angled more upwards and your shot's going to go up, and vice versa. If you have a high anchor point, your shot is now going downwards and is going to be a lower shot. Now, to show you this first technique in action, I'm going to talk you through what I'm thinking as I'm watching my shots and tuning in my sights as I'm trying to hit this can here. So first thing I'm going to do is start at my standard anchor point, which is with my thumb right between my lower jaw where it connects to my skull, and then adjust it depending on whether it's high or low. Okay, so I did hit the can, however it was very, very low. I'm gonna adjust my anchor point a little bit underneath where my jaw connects to my skull and see if we can hit this guy in the middle. That was a much better shot. Let's do it one more time. Moving into this second shooting technique here, this is just a simple way to minimize your shot being thrown off either left and right or up and down based upon the movement of your hand. Instead of trying to keep your aiming point directly overlapping your target the entire time, you actually start with your aiming point off of the target and move it into frame, and when they overlap, that's when you time it and release. So as a visual representation of what I'm talking about here, your slingshot aiming point for through the fork setup, which is what I have here, is right there. So what I will do is I'll start with my aiming over here and I'll pull it until it overlaps with the target right there, and that is where I will release my shot. As I said, you can also do this up and down. Start with it low and bring it up until it overlaps and release there. This is super helpful if you have issues with keeping your hand from not wobbling up and down or left and right. I in particular start with my aiming point to the right and sweep it into frame and release there because I have some issues with keeping it oriented properly in the left and right plane. This is also super useful for doing moving shots, since instead of trying to adjust for your natural movement and bouncing, you can just accept that natural movement and wait until your aiming point overlaps with your target and then release it then. What I also find super interesting in talking to my dad is that he says that people who compete in 3-gun shooting competitions use the same sort of technique as well. So this overlaps with other areas of marksmanship. Now to demonstrate the second technique, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sweep my aim across all of those targets and release when I get to the can, just to show you a scaled up version of what I'm talking about here. There we go, let's hit it one more time. Nice. So as a final demonstration of how well these techniques work, I'm going to do a pure kind of talk you through how I'm trying to hit the shot behind me, of me trying to hit one of these little army men set up down there at 40 feet. This might take me a couple of shots. This is kind of a tough shot for me, but I'm just going to walk you through what my thought process is and how I'm adjusting my aim throughout these shots. Alright, so first shot, I'm going to have my anchor point a little bit below where my standard anchor point is and just sweep into frame just as I was talking about. Okay, so that shot was a little bit low. I'm not sure if the camera down there could see where that shot placement was. I'm going to bring it just a little bit lower on my face. Now that one was a little bit high. I gotta go right in the middle of where those last two were. Three shots, I just smoked that thing. And now that you can see this works, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something from it and are able to become more accurate with your slingshot shooting. If you did, make sure to subscribe because I've got more informational and educational content coming your way real soon. And with all that being said, God bless. I'll see you next time.